Hi everyone, I'm super excited to bring to you this new interview with my dear friend and colleague Kathy Wong. So for those of you who don't know who she is, and I'm just going to give you a very short introduction because I think many of you may know her on social media. So Kathy founded and ran many businesses before. Some of them are design-based, and then most recent one, I would say Moeloco, which is a socially responsible enterprise. It's purpose-driven, where you are selling thongs, and in each pair you sew, you're actually going to make a donation to children in poverty and disadvantaged children. So I knew Kathy for quite a few years, and I know recently that she is going to make some new changes in her life. And this is why I want to interview her for this week, because this week is all about starting over, how to create new beginnings. So welcome, Kathy.
Hey, Sue Wing. Hello. Thanks for having me on here.
I'm so glad that I catch a glimpse of you, because for those of you who don't know, Kathy is actually a really busy woman. So I think you have been traveling. No, you have been traveling, what, like 10 months of the year?
I've done
So
about 7 months, and now I'll be going off for 10 months. Yeah, exactly. So a bit more traveling yet.
yeah, so why so when I heard that she's back in town, and I just really want to interview her because not only she's someone who have done quite a few extraordinary things in business and also for the society, but the fact that now I know recently you have decided to step down and close Moeloco and move into a new chapter in your life and going overseas and traveling, all that. And I think a lot of times for many of our listeners or viewer, we're so busy like creating new business and starting new things, but we often feel very uncomfortable to complete or to finish or to close the previous chapter. So I have lots of questions to ask you, but I think first of all, take us through what made you to come into the realization that yes, it was beautiful, meaningful, it was great. I know you were passionate about local, but when do you come to a point when you know it's time to change, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, very good question, Sue Wing. I think it wasn't just something that happened overnight. It was, a gradual process like all these things are. But, I was not feeling the same fulfillment. I was being, I suppose, overtaken by the stress and anxiety of what I was doing. It was obviously beautiful. I, enjoyed the people I met. I enjoyed being able to make that difference. But it was hard work, I've got to say. And so, I was getting very tired. I was, getting to a stage of, because I'd been burnt out before, so I could feel that, starting to happen. I thought, oh, wow, there's time, I really need time out here. What am I doing? And, I'm not getting any younger. And so I thought, I've really got to look after myself here. And the whole journey of everything, I suppose, I've done, but in particular, the final catalyst was Moeloco, was, here I was creating a business that was all about nurturing others, and yet I wasn't nurturing myself. And this has been I suppose, a pattern I've had for all my life, really. And then that got, further exaggerated, I suppose, when I took over, created a cause-based business.
Mm.
And so I just thought, it's time for me now. It really is. And, women are not particularly good at me time, are they? It's all about everybody else. And, our society is very much around that as well. And, you can relate to this. We've had these conversations about, our Asian culture as well. So all of those things, came to a head. And, I finally felt like I'd grown up.
Mm.
Yeah, in making that decision, because I retired over 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's
And
what I wanted to ask, because I know we famously said this is the second time I'm retiring, and then who knows what's down the pipeline, right?
yeah, exactly. So I tried that once at 42, and I did that for 10 years, but I wasn't fully retired. I still felt like I had to do all these things. And so whilst it wasn't around business, well, actually, no, I started a hobby which turned into a business.
Mm.
And so there I was again, repeating exactly what I knew, what I've done all my life,
Mm.
busy, 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 doing. And so now I am really enjoy doing nothing.
But actually doing nothing, is that even possible for people like yourself? Because as far as I know, you'll be traveling and maybe learning and be doing different things. So doing nothing, probably it's not nothing.
No, you're right. Doing nothing is really now about inwardly focusing on myself and looking at what is it that, really I want to do for myself and nobody else. So
Mm.
it's self-care, it's self-love. So yeah, you're right. It's not doing nothing, but doing nothing in the sense of what, I've been used to, conditioned to be doing all my life. That's the part that is different. And now, as I said, I've never focused on myself and my own self-love. So that's the doing nothing that I'm referring to.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, so for those that who maybe tossing with this idea about closing a chapter, or say winding down a business, or changing direction, or really put a close to a chapter. So what would you recommend people to do in that sense? Because it's a transition phase, isn't it? It's not that you're probably building up with frustration and exhaustion over a while, and then you eventually come to terms with it, make peace with it. So because you've gone through a couple of times yourself, what would be the advice you give to people? That's what it's sort of lingering in their mind.
Yeah, look, I think it comes down to really one simple thing, Sue Wing, and that is really listen to your intuition and your heart, really look at what is it that makes you happy, because it's so easy to get caught up in, I have a friend who's recently retired, and he's only been retired for a few months, and already he's going crazy. He's got a list of like 20 things he's doing. He's now talking about going back to part-time work. I said, but he just retired, but I can understand where he's coming from. And so it's really about not what you think you should be doing, because again, it's about, we're so conditioned to what society has always told us, that we must be busy, we must be doing stuff all the time. But really just sitting and being with yourself and going, what is it I want? And so I would say it requires a lot of sitting around and being quiet. And, however that is for you, it might mean that you do a lot of walking, meditating, whatever it is, but spending that time with yourself and listening to yourself.
Mm. So what you have discovered since you make that decision that, okay, so I'm going to put an end to this particular project. So what happened to your life since then?
Yeah, well, look, first of all, it's about boundaries again, right? Because since I came back, even while I was away, there were so many business opportunities
Mm.
thrown at me, and they were very tempting, but it was like, no, it's okay to say no. Because again, I am a yes person, as I think probably the majority of people, particularly females again. And so for me to actually go, no, I need to honor myself. I need to honor that I've made this decision. I need time out. And so I am just saying no to everything at the moment, and I'm still being challenged with that because, that shiny object, the FOMO, it still is there. And that's okay because I realize it's there. It's not like I'm going to completely change myself, but I'm just aware of when certain things kick in that I catch myself out and I can go, right. That's where I would go down a path of saying yes. And therefore, before I know it, I'm again back in the old way,
Mm. And I'm curious that because, often I find that when we say no to one thing, it's actually we're saying yes to another, right? But there must be some of those opportunities. Because I know that majority of last year and early this year, you've been traveling a lot. So you said you've been saying no to opportunities. So what are the good examples, whether they're typical things that you feel, but I just have to say no, or some of those extraordinary things that you can't believe you actually managed to say no? What are the juicy bits that you're like, oh my God, I said no to that?
Yeah. Well, there's probably a lot of them, but a lot of people were asking me to go and speak at events, something I really wanted to do. last year. And again, I said no because I wanted to, be open to some other opportunity. And so by not having my diary continually, accounted for, I had the most beautiful opportunities, from going to private concerts at strangers' homes, and listening to a band that was been traveling around Africa, not Africa, African people who've been traveling around the world for the last 10 years, and being able to be there right at the moment they happen to sail in to this particular cove, and be part of a private concert on this beautiful private jetty on somebody's fjord in Norway. So that's an example of the many opportunities I had because I could be spontaneous. Can't be very spontaneous when your diary is full because of all these commitments you've made. So learning not to make all these commitments has been a huge lesson for me. And as you said, it then opens up beautiful opportunities by saying no to one thing, then all these yeses could come in.
Because in a way you kind of shift gear, you change goals, because before, when you're running the business 100%, the goals are, say, spreading the words or getting more sales or bringing more awareness, doing more contribution, impact in the world. There's a very different sets of goals. And when you change your mind, and usually that kind of goal comes with a lot of meeting, calls, interviews, things that networking, and then that really fill up the schedule really fast, and everything has a particular agenda, purpose, or what it's about. But then when you change that goal into follow the flow and see what brings you, suddenly you have no particularly, this is my set agenda, this is the milestone. You just open, and then crazy things happen. Because you told me some, as you said, you told me some story where you invited to private jetty parties and, traveling amazing sites. And you also got the opportunity to stay if you feel like, doing something longer and meeting people and building relationship, not based on what you can go get to get out of it. You know how often people treat that sort of meeting very transactional. It's like, so what am I going to get out of this conversation, out of this encounter? So much, sort of have it going on. You can almost see it that they're thinking.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good point, because I didn't have any agendas like that anymore, because when we do business, we usually do have all these agendas. And so I was completely open. And then in that process, as you said, being in the flow, I just was taken along with the flow, and it just all went so smoothly and so easily. Nothing was a struggle. Everything was just like I was going, downstream all the time. And so, then I just got to meet the most incredible people. And it was interesting because even though I had started to switch off work, things still came back to work, because people would say, so what do you do? Oh, wow, that's really interesting. I'd love you to meet this person who's in that same area. And yet that was not on my agenda, So it's just a different energy that, starts to move.
I think there's definitely a mastery in it, because I'm not saying that, we should all have no goals or no, plans in the future. We do. But I think we need to be mindful of sometimes, like just when I met you, you felt you got a kindred spirit, you got something to share and talk about. It's not always every conversation we had is about what am I going to get out of this? How typical it can become. I think this is a fine line between, when you meet people, you definitely have your vision, have goal, your business running in the background. But when you meet people are people. Yeah. People are not equate business opportunities. They may lead to, but relationship first. It's often my mode. I mean, I wouldn't have the most exciting, interesting conversation with people like yourself and relationship with others if I had that constantly, because it's very tiring.
It's so exhausting. And, I've always, they say anyway in all the textbooks, right, around sales, if you like, people will do business anyway with people that they like. At the end of the day, all things being equal, if they're looking at different companies and they can all deliver, why do they pick one over the other, right? So as you said, it's all about relationships in life. And then, of course, that translates to business, And so, yeah, that has been the most amazing part, just the human relationships and the connections that I've been able to form since I just gave up the whole idea of, just wanting to run a business. Yeah.
And
So that's amazing.
And I wanted to ask you a bit about go back a little bit earlier. You mentioned that you actually retired the first time when you were 42. So what got you out from, starting something new? Because I think some people may close the chapter, maybe have a few years or a few months off, whatever that is, until the next opportunity comes. So what triggered your coming out from that retirement, or, what was your experience of it?
Yeah, well, look, I spent in that 10 years I was retired, I moved out to the Southern Highlands. I was on this big property, renovated a house, learnt all I could about, organic gardening. And then after I did that, then I was starting to think, oh, I need something else in my life. So then I went off to learn jewelry making and textiles. And that's when that hobby turned into a business, because I felt this compelling need. I couldn't relax. I felt compelling need to always be doing something, right? And then I got really drained doing that too, because suddenly my hobby, which I absolutely loved, was about teaching people in classes, how to do what I was doing, then, selling the works that I was creating. And so that really, to me, wasn't retirement as what I thought it was going to be, because retirement to me too was all about having peace, and I still didn't have peace. That has been what I've always been searching for, right? Now I have finally got it. But it took me all that time, and then I found myself divorced. So that was then another major transition. So moved from the Highlands back to Sydney, moved into a whole new area that I'd never lived in, then had to get to be part of a new community, which was amazing. And then I started thinking to myself, well, what am I going to do now? Again, I felt this need, I needed to do something. But in that process, I really also came to another point in my life about finding myself again. And in that process, I discovered that I really wanted to go make a difference. I wanted to become a change maker. So that's what set me off on that journey. And then in that process, I still found myself back to busy again, doing, even though I loved what I was doing, and it was a very different type of business to all the other businesses that I had been involved in, because I was making impact. I still brought my old patterns of behavior into that new life. And so, yeah.
But it's so fascinating to listen to, because first of all, for people who may be, I don't know, starting out, maybe younger than us, or about to start a business instead of rent a field. First of all, can you hear from Kathy that, often we are multi-passionate being, that maybe in our 20s, we love to do organic gardening, and then maybe in our 30s, we do fashion or renovating houses. I don't know. Things can change. I think a lot of times people are very afraid to commit to something because they think that's going to be their whole life. So if you move to Southern Highland, that's it. You're just going to stay with the cows. And, there is this ultimate sort of entrapment, but that's only in our head, isn't it? Because you find yourself one thing lead to another. Life is full of change. So whether it's about your marriage, about your living scenario or interest, they evolve. So nothing is so fixated, and especially when you open-minded. Yeah.
Change is, inevitable, right? And so as I get older, everyone's saying to me, this is the age when you retire, that you should, start doing certain things. You shouldn't be like, I've given up my house, I'm about to go off, I don't know where that's going to go. that's the time when most people are saying, oh no, that's the time you should really be settled and you should be doing this and you should be doing that. Well, I'm going totally the other way. All the things that I couldn't do when I was younger that most people might have done, I'm now doing, you know, and it feels fantastic because I feel really liberated. I feel free. And, you know, like you said, life is, it's lots of different moments, lots of change. And I find that really exciting. That's how you grow.
And that's why Kathy come across as such an interesting person. And you people who know Kathy in person, you know, she tends to be a connector, connecting different people. She's well sought after as a speaker and networking person. It's because of that, because I think there's a big part to it that we are open-minded, multi-passionate person. When we find something we like, we really go 100%, if not 120%. But then we also can make space and make peace with, okay, we need to change gear now. We're going to do something different. And that's also huge. For many people, they think that's only one way. It's like you either keep going or you die. Like, as in they can't come with terms with, I can just close this business, because you have a choice to, you know, live in the house or buy the house instead of moving, going somewhere, right? That's the choice you make based on what your heart says.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree. We all have choices, but so many people, I think they use that as an excuse that they don't have choices because they're scared. The majority of people do not like change. They would rather do something that they're not happy with than go and, you know, to them, it's like jumping off the deep end and having to explore something that they don't know anything about. You know, when I started my social enterprise, I didn't know anything about that. And yes, it was scary, but it was also very exciting. You know, going out to the Southern Highlands, what did I know? I was a city girl. What did I know about, you know, gardening and, you know, dealing with, you know, all the things that I had to deal with out there, you know. So, but again, you just put yourself out there and you learn, and, you know, and if you don't like it, then you can change again.
Everything is figure outable, right? As in, I don't think God tends to hang you out dry. Like, as in, oh, find my passion jewelry, and it just happened that you can't do anything about jewelry, that you are completely colorblind or unable to design anything. I think it's very unlikely you find a passion and it's so not aligned with your abilities and opportunities. It's often things are kind of like lurking in the background, and then once you declare or become clear to yourself, this is my passion, this is my next big important project, opportunities tend to open up, and you also know where to look for the skills and the gaps and the things that you need. So I think it's quite organic as long as we're willing to commit to that change. But I understand that some people may not have those experiences that we had to jump, you know, some people say we jump off the cliff, but to fly. But I think sometimes it's not as traumatic. But when you've done a few times, like myself, like moving from Norway to London and here, I mean, that people think, oh, that's crazy. But no, once you've done something out of the ordinary or whatever that is, or you challenge yourself once, the second time is much easier. So what could be the tips you have for our listeners or viewers that if they can feel they're uncomfortable with where they are, they wanted to change and, you know, mix things up a bit, but they are uneasy to make that move, what would you recommend them to do?
Look, embrace that discomfort. Just embrace it, because as you said, it's all part of the natural organic process that needs to take place. And then, you know, surround yourself with other people too, who are either in a similar situation and those who have done it, because, you know, having others that you can gain inspiration from makes you feel a lot easier, I suppose, and more comfortable. And, you know, and just keep chipping away at it. You know, it doesn't have to happen overnight. Like with my retirement, it didn't happen overnight. As we've said, I had to have 2 goes at it. But, you know, by keeping that trust as well, that, hey, I really want this, and giving yourself permission. You know, so many people don't give themselves permission. So give yourself the permission to feel into that and to know that it will be okay and you will be able to do that. It might just take a little bit longer, but just to have that belief system is huge. And that's why I said surrounding yourself with others, listening to other scenarios, you know, and, you know, just keep working at it. bit by bit, you'll get closer to, sometimes we don't even know what that is, right? We don't know what it is. Like now, I'm in a position where I don't know what I want to do next. All I want to know now is that I just want to do no more business and travel and look after myself, right? And in that process, something will emerge. I know it will. So I'm not worried about that. But the main thing for me was I had to give myself permission because, yes, I went through this whole thing of feeling guilty, feeling like, oh, will people think I'm a failure? What about the kids? I can't let them down. And so everything was all this talk around everybody else, but not what I really wanted, So I had to go through that to then make my decision.
Well, that sounds like, sometimes closing a chapter takes more courage than opening one. Because, when you said letting people down, often for women, it's like, oh my God, we can never do that. Or saying that, look, I really need to look after myself. And this is the stage in my life. I don't want to be boxed down with a business. That's huge. You got, I say people maybe, looking up to you or depend on you in some way or form. So I think that's really about courage, isn't it? To find courage in that situation. I think sometimes it comes with age, but sometimes it's more like the trust in you, the permission you have that you talked about. And I love what you said about embrace the discomfort. Like in yoga, you need to go deeper. You have to hold on to that posture, even though it's uncomfortable. And then surround yourself with the like-minded people. And I personally found that's really number one key for a lot of things I've done. It's like I'll look at someone who published a book or create a product or do something that I thought that was pretty cool that you did. And if she could do it, I could do it. If nobody was born more or less, and they may have more experience, they may have a little bit more this or more that. But it doesn't mean you can, gather that, accumulate it, and achieve that maybe step by step, maybe a little bit slower. But I really think to be with people is very important to see she can do it and so can I.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to that too, Sue Wing, is start sharing with people what you're thinking, because by being vulnerable, it again allows other people to also have that permission to share with you. And so often you find that there's so many other people all thinking the same thing as you, but no one's talking about it. And so, I think that was really surprising to me when I came out and I said this and shared this with everybody. I couldn't believe the response I had from people, saying, oh my God, this is fantastic. I wish I could do that. It's so courageous. And I really hadn't thought about that. I just kept thinking about myself and, who I would be letting down and all of that. But when people started to come to me and make these comments and share, I just realized how many other people were in the similar circumstances. And had I known that back then, that would have given me extra strength then, which would have been very helpful.
I think you inspire them to be honest with themselves too, because we are people who more comfortable with maintaining an uncomfortable situation than break the bone and say no more. I mean, I think we are more accustomed to just staying uncomfortable rather than, do something different. I think that's really not usual. Like we don't really talk about starting over or putting an end to a chapter and starting a new one. Often we don't hear that much in these conversations, but I think it's very important. So I think you really inspire a lot of people to re-examine what they're doing and what is the why, because understanding the why really can bring home why you're doing what you're doing. And have you achieved that already? If you have, then what could be the next? We gotta go back to the why from time to time rather than just keep digging it.
Yeah, I love that. You're so right about that why. It underpins everything. It does. Yeah. And again, if you're so busy doing things all the time, you can't spend that time, working out what that is for you, because so many people have become so disconnected from themselves. They're so busy trying to just keep up and be on that, treadmill, doing life, but they're not really doing life. And so they don't give themselves permission to feel anything. So they become completely desensitized, completely disconnected. The number of people I have met along the way where they don't even know what they're passionate about. It's like amazing. And they couldn't even give me one thing they were passionate about. And I found that really sad because they were so shut down to their own feelings.
But sometimes we could be passionate about something and then we'll get so worked up in making it work. Say you're passionate in dancing, but then you really need to make it a career and make money out of it and rah, rah. And it becomes such a heavy burden to make it work. Rather, it may be easy if you just do dancing as a hobby, but you find a day job. But people sometimes have that problem too, that they find it very hard to balance what is passion and what can be profession. And sometimes it can be the same thing, but sometimes it may not be the most suited. But I believe everyone have a passion and their unique abilities and so forth. So if people can't answer you that question, really, they got to pause.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, I can't tell you how many people I've come across, and it just floored me. It just really floored me.
And that's across the board, isn't it? Because you travel to so many countries, having different kinds of conversations. We're not just talking about Australians, or Americans, or European, or
demographics. Yes. So many people. It was a universal problem.
Wow. So I really hope that our conversation today will bring some light or spark to our viewers and audience. And I think, I'm really curious about people's response about our topic for this week about starting over and create new beginnings. So I'm very excited for your new beginnings to come. I know you're going to be traveling, you're going to do a lot of unexpected things and keep yourself open. But if people want to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to, if they want to hear your inspiring story? And I'm sure you will post things on social media to keep people updated about your adventures, right?
Yes. Well, look, probably the best way, Sue Wing, is Facebook and Instagram, where I just go under Kathy Wong, Kathy Wong Sid on Instagram, and then Kathy Wong on Facebook, because yes, I'm still sharing my thoughts as, a thought leader. I'm still sharing my experiences. And so, yeah, I'd love people to still, connect and follow the journey, because I don't know where the journey is going to go. And so we're all on the journey together, and we're just sometimes taking different paths.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kathy. And I will also put your social handle below the video and on the blog for the podcast. So thank you so much for today. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you. And look, all the things that you do, and I noticed you mentioned the dancing. You're still doing that.
Well, not as much, partly because, I know that, even though at some point me and my husband were competing and I was teaching on the side, it was more like a hobby, and I would never want to destroy it by putting in the pressure on it. What I love about Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, is that she makes such a commitment to writing. She said, writing, I will take care of you. I will take waitressing job. I will look after you so I can do you right. Instead of thinking how you're going to use writing to make money, which is totally legitimate, which is totally great when it happens. But sometimes if you love something, you just got to find a way to do that thing you love, which I thought it was very inspirational.
I totally agree. And, sometimes, as you said, it might not be that it's meant to be our career, but just a hobby.
Yeah. So the yoga and the dancing for me is just hobby. I don't want it to overtake, and it can sometimes, when you say your jewelry was a hobby, and when it becomes a business, it's a very different ball game. So
that's right. And it was no longer had the same joy to it that it did when I just did it as a hobby.
So anyway, thank you so much for everyone around listening and watching. And thank you again, Kathy. And hopefully I will talk to you again soon.
Thanks again, Sue Wing. Thank you.